Little Samson NES is one of the most expensive games on the system. So why am I holding a copy I bought for 99 quid? Because this is not quite Little Samson. It's the Japanese version, released as Seirei Densetsu Lickle on the Nintendo Famicom. And it might be the closest most of us will ever get to owning one of the NES's biggest legends. But that only works if the game is actually worth the hype, and that is where this gets interesting. Little Samson is one of those games that barely feels real anymore, because for most people, the price tag arrives before the gameplay does. The second someone says Little Samson, most collectors don't think of bosses, level design, or music. They think, how much? And fair enough, because the North American version has become one of those nightmare cartridges, the kind of game people talk about in the same breath as impossible prices, auction screenshots, and bad life choices. So when I found the Japanese version for around £99, I had that dangerous collector thought. Maybe this is the smart way in. Maybe this is the back door into a Grail. Or maybe I've just spent 99 quid on the version people buy when they can't afford the real one. Here's the case I'm making. If Little Samson NES is as good as the legend says it is, if the gameplay holds up, if the design delivers, then Lickle isn't a consolation prize. It's the smartest move available in this part of the market. But if the hype is mythology, if this is just a game that got famous for being expensive and nothing more, then 99 quid is still a foolish amount of money to spend on a loose Famicom cartridge. So let's find out which one it is. That's the tension with a game like this, because Little Samson is not just expensive, it is respected. This was a late era NES game from Taito, developed by Takeru, and you can feel that late generation confidence straight away, the kind you see in Mega Man 6 or Castlevania 3. It has that look old school consoles get near the end of their lives, when developers stop asking what the hardware can do and start showing off instead. The sprites are big, bright, and full of character. The animation is smooth, the whole thing feels polished, in a way that instantly tells you this is not bargain bin filler. And then you get to the real gimmick. You don't just play as one hero, you play as four. That is the bit that makes Little Samson stick. Samson is the safe all-rounder. He jumps well, attacks fast, and just feels good straight away. Kikira, the dragon, can hover, which instantly changes how you move through the stages. Gam is the powerhouse. Slow, heavy, built for smashing through trouble rather than dancing around it. And then there's KO the mouse, who is tiny, can cling to walls and ceilings, and drop bombs like he's trying to make up for being the size of a biscuit. That one mechanic does so much for the game, because now it isn't just a nice looking action platformer. Every level becomes a small decision. Who is the safest here? Who makes this jump easier? Who is the best for this boss? Who do I switch to when things start getting ugly? That's why people still rate this thing. It is not just rare, it is actually a really good game. And that matters more than you'd think, because rarity and quality don't usually travel together at this end of the NES market. Stadium events is famous, it's not really fun. Nintendo World Championships is legendary, but it's not something you sit down and play on a Tuesday night with a cup of tea. Most gaming grails sitting at the top of the NES retro game collecting list are there because of circumstance. A tiny print run, a regional quirk, a licensing disaster that killed the shipment before it reached the shelves, not because someone made a brilliant game. Little Samson is the exception. It earned its place in that conversation. The rarity just found it later. And that changes everything about what you're actually buying when you pick this one up. And that matters, because expensive retro games can be really annoying. Sometimes you finally play one of these legendary titles and realise you've paid for the myth, not the game. You're not buying a masterpiece, you're buying a story, a reputation, a collector badge. But Little Samson is frustrating because the hype is actually deserved. It really is that good. Not perfect, not magical, but properly good. The sort of game where, after 10 minutes, you can already see why people remember it. Which brings me back to this copy, because the more I played Lickle, the more I realised the real appeal here is not that somehow I beat the market. £99 for a loose Famicom cart is still ridiculous by normal person standards, but in retro collecting terms, especially for this title, it starts to feel weirdly reasonable. And that is exactly how this hobby gets into your head. You stop asking, is this expensive? And start asking, compared to what? That question, compared to what, is the turning point. Because once you've asked it, you can't take it back. I looked at the North American cart selling for 4 figures on eBay, and I looked at this, 99. And suddenly, I wasn't asking myself if I'd overpaid. I was asking myself how I'd feel if I had paid £1,000 for just a cartridge. That is the moment the hobby wins. Because if what you want is the exact North American Little Samson cart, this is not that. The Western release has its own mystique, its own rarity, its own bragging rights. That psychology is real. But if what you care about is the game itself, then Lickle starts making a lot of sense. You still get the great platforming, you still get the character switching idea that makes it stand out. You still get that late NES quality people rave about, and maybe best of all, you get to come at the game sideways, not through flex culture, not through a giant price tag, not through years of hearing the name whispered like it belongs in a museum. You just get to play it, and honestly, there is something refreshing about that. Retro games can turn into relics if we're not careful. They stop being games we want to play and start becoming objects, things to seal away, things to stare at more than enjoy. Lickle pulls Little Samson back into the world a bit. It reminds you there is still a real game under all that collector fog, a very good one too. And that's why I think this pickup works so well as a middle ground, but it is close enough to touch the legend without completely losing your mind. For me, that is what made the 99 quid easier to swallow. Not because it was cheap, it wasn't. Not because it is the exact version every hardcore NES collector dreams about, it isn't. But because it let me get close to one of the most talked about games on the system in a way that still felt fun, still felt tangible, and still felt just a little bit absurd. Which really is retro collecting in a nutshell. Half history lesson, half treasure hunt, half terrible financial decision. So was it worth it? Yeah, I think it was, because I stopped waiting for the version I'll probably never afford and started actually playing the game behind the legend. And for 99 quid, that felt like a very good deal. And if you want to see how I turned an empty wild gun box into a potential bargain, click this video on screen. Till next time, Crypt Dwellers, keep on digging.